It was a few days before Christmas, and Sandra Dunstan checked to make sure that nobody was watching. And she took her milk and dumped it into the guppy tank. And it slowly mushroomed to the bottom, obliterating the guppies. Now, Sandra was 10 years old and she knew better, but she giggled. And then she heard something and she turned around guiltily, and there was her 12-year-old brother, Michael, who all of a sudden took a great interest in the aquarium. Save the women and children first, he said. And he grabbed a piece of toast off the breakfast table and threw it in there as a life raft. And Sandra said, isn't this fun? How about some bacon for some oars? Oh, that's cool. And so he said, well, they need provisions. So he took some cereal and he dumped it in the tank. And then she took some oatmeal and said 1 teaspoon per guppy. And it was so heavy, it floated the life raft right to the bottom. Oh, too bad, said Michael. Oh, what about a grapefruit boat? Rub-a-dub-dub, 3 men in a tub. So he took a half a grapefruit and he slung it into the aquarium with such force that out splashed gunky, smelly, gooky, yucky water all over the floor. And that's when their plump elderly housekeeper chose to walk in the room. Children, what are you doing to those fish? Get them out of that slop. Well, Michael and Sandra watched as Mrs. Hoyt made her way to the aquarium, and of course, her foot landed in a puddle of the gunky stuff, and she, lurching, trying not to fall a bit, she sprawled right there in the middle of all that gunk. And Sandra and Michael laughed. They laughed. Oh, Mrs. Hoy, you are so funny. That's when their father, Mr. Daniel Dunstan, walked into the breakfast room. He was normally a very patient man and very lonely since his wife died 5 years ago. And he was usually very soft-spoken. But today, when he saw his housekeeper wiped out on the floor, the guppies breathing their last, and his kids laughing uproariously, he shouted, "Shut up, you monsters, and get the mop!" Oddly enough, that was the beginning of a very interesting Christmas. A remarkable adventure was awaiting Michael and Sandra Dunstan, 2 of the most spoiled children that ever lived in Atlanta, Georgia. They needed Christmas worse than just about anybody. They needed Christmas so bad that it was even worse than Mrs. Hoyt thought they needed a spanking. They needed Christmas more than their teachers at their elite private school thought they needed to go to a school for the delinquents. Only their father knew the truth. He was tired and rich. So he bought everything money could buy while their mother had passed. But the truth is, what really mattered, they were completely ignorant of. Do you realize what could have happened to Mrs. Hoyt when she fell? That could have been a serious fall. She could be taken to the hospital now. And their response was, and pushing their breakfast away and refusing to listen to what they said was lectures. I can't believe you'd act so badly just before Christmas. Oh, does that mean we don't get any presents? Well, fine then, said Sandra. Michael said, well, there's nothing much that I'm interested in anyway. In fact, I have a bunch of junk I'll give you back if you want. Presents, said their father. Presents? Christmas is so much more than presents. But the fact that you don't know, I suspect is pretty much my fault. What do you say that we just went away? Just the three of us. Just get out of town for a few days. What do you think? Sandra said, oh, well, maybe we could go to California. I would like to see some movie stars at Hollywood. Michael said, no, let's go someplace decent. I want to see some excitement. Father said, well, I was thinking of a cabin in the woods. There's a guy that at my work that has one there, and he said I could use it anytime I wanted to. We could just do our own cooking. We could get our own water from the creek. We could chop our own firewood. We could go for some great long walks and have some good talks. What do you say? Oh, great, said Sandra. Michael's response was, oh, brother, Christmas in a cabin in the woods? Whose corny idea was that? Well, not too much later, Sandra found herself in the back seat, piled high with blankets and food. She didn't know how long they'd been riding, but they did take a side road off in the middle of nowhere. Michael was in the front seat, pretending to be asleep. He ran out of sulky answers to give his father's questions. Well, said Father, this looks like it. Let's see. 2 rooms and a screened-in. Yeah, that's what Sam Jackson said. Call that a house? Said Sandra. Michael said, I call it a dump. Well, said Father, let's just go see. He stopped the car and he ran up to the front and he got the keys and tried the lock and, hey, it works. This has got to be it. Come on, kids, help me unlock. Let's get this stuff out of the car and we'll get settled soon. Oh, I don't feel so good. My side hurts, said Michael. Sandra said, it looks scary and dark and cold. Why don't let's just go back to a hotel? Father said, oh, we'll get this place warmed up in no time at all. We'll get a fire going. Come on, give me a hand with that picnic basket. I happen to know that Mrs. Hoyt packed us some hot chocolate. So come on, let's go. Reluctantly, the kids got out of the car and followed their father up the path to go into the house. They followed his flashlight as it went around and bunk beds, more bunk beds, fireplace. That's about it. Before you know it, Father got a big old fire going and he got the kerosene lamp lit and he reached out and pulled both kids to him. He says, I know, you're tired and you're hungry. What we're gonna do is eat and go to bed. Tomorrow's gonna be a wonderful day. We're gonna start by me showing you how to make flapjacks the best you ever put in your mouth. Sandra took her father's hand and pushed it off and went, ugh. Father went to the car to get another load. And while he was absent for a minute, Michael said, Sandy, tomorrow we're gonna run away. The next morning dawned bright, blue sky, clear. There was a silvery frost on everything, but Michael and Sandra were running away, so they were not noticing the beautiful creation around them. By mid-morning, it was crisp and clear outside and sharp air, And Michael and Sandra were hopelessly lost. Michael stumbled over a rocky slope and said, "My side hurts." Sandra said, "Oh, you and your side. You can your side, Father, and you can your side, Mrs. Hoyt, but you can't your side me. I know better. You had your pennies out a long time ago. There's nothing wrong with your side. And we are lost, and your side is not going to get us found. So what you got to do about that?" Michael said, "Oh, shut up." He didn't know what had happened wrong. He thought from where they were, they could just shortcut through the woods, get over to the highway, and thumb a ride back to Atlanta and home. And boy, wouldn't that show Father that he couldn't just take them and put them for Christmas in an isolated cabin. He's probably out looking for us right now. Well, I hope he has a good look. Well, just then, his next step was on some stones that were rolling, and he lost his balance, and next thing he knew is he went down for the count, but his ankle got smooshed in against a rock, and did that ever hurt? And Sandra laughed. But then it turned the tables. She took a step on a long, thorny branch that snapped when she stepped on it, and it went and got her right in the face, and her nose and her cheek were bleeding, and she was, with the blood running down, crying, and he thought he might laugh at her. But something, maybe it was that his ankle hurt so bad, or maybe it was that he was so cold, or maybe he was so tired, or maybe he was hungry, or maybe he was scared. But something made him decide not to laugh at Sandra. He decided to act like a big brother and said, "What do you say, Sandra, if we went back to the cabin? Father's be there, and we could get something to eat." "Oh, you think we can? Well, let's go. But do you think you could find our way back?" "Oh, sure," he said. "We'll just cut through the woods, we'll find the creek, and we'll follow the creek up to the cabin. Easy like that." Hours and hours and hours later, as they slugged through the woods, there was vines, those kind that tangle and get all stuck around your foot. You got to get them off, and then you got another load of them, and there were sharp vines, and so they were cut and bruised and kept tripping up and falling down and getting up and falling down and getting up, and it was all hard going. It was so cold, they were stiff. Their shoes were sopping wet because they had to go through the marsh. Michael lost a cap, Sandra lost a mitten, and the overcast became darker and darker and darker. And it looked like they might be the edge of the clearing, but they couldn't quite see. Sandra began to cry. She didn't like being in the dark, and she wondered if anybody was ever going to find them. "Shh, Sandy, listen." They stared into the clearing, and they saw a movement. A little boy leading a cow down the path in the clearing. Michael and Sandra thought they never, ever had seen anything as beautiful as the cabin that Pete Mills and his cow Fancy led them to. Oh, it wasn't a pretty cabin. It wasn't even painted. And it was dark, but overhead in the chimney was a little blue streak of smoke. it looked kind of like it was skywriting above the roof, a welcome to them. And they went inside, and there was a fire, and they went right up to that fire and warmed their hands. Oh, that felt so good. And they took off their wet shoes and socks and started to unnumb their feet. And they just never felt anything as wonderful as that. And over in the corner was a lady saying nice, welcoming things to them. There were 4 little girls kind of made a circle around Sandra and Michael. They were smiling shyly. The lady said, well, let's get to fixing, kids. We young'uns, we got company, Christmas company. I've been listening to that Banty Rooster all day long, and he's been going. I said, we're going to have company for Christmas, and here they is. Oh, we're so glad you're here. Come on, we got to get to fixing. Ivy, you set the table. Maybeth, you get the leather breeches. Oh, and the crackling bread. And Pete, go milk Fancy. Nothing would be better than warm milk on a night like tonight. And so they all went to their proper chores, and the 2 little girls, the twins, 4 years old. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't tell you, I'm Mrs. Mills. We're the Millses, and these are the least ones. They're little, but they're such a help to me. Now, you give them your coats, and you pull up a chair, and Michael knew it was time for him to speak up as the oldest, and he said, well, we're the Dunstons. I'm Michael, and this is my sister, Sandra. We're staying at Sam Jackson's cabin. It's over the mountain somewhere, and we're lost. Lost, she said. Mercy me. Is your father lost too? We don't know. We left him at the cabin. They weren't going to tell the nice lady they ran away. Well, you ones will be just fine. You ones stay right here. Your father will find you. And I don't know about that Sam Jackson cabin. We don't get Yon Mountain very often. But it doesn't matter. You'll be fine. And then she got real serious and she said, you know, I've been praying all day to the Lord to send something fine and special for my youngest, and look what he did for answer to prayer. I couldn't be prouder to see anybody but you. And now you're here, and you'll get some food, and after you ate, and after you rested, well, we're gonna have a party. It's Christmas Eve, and we got company. Well, they sat down to leather breeches, which are tender young green beans, snapped and strung up in the rafters where they dried. And then they were cooked in bacon rind and red peppers. It smelled and tasted like sun and summertime. And those crackling bread, it was cooked on a pone. It was real crispy on the outside with real tender and little bits of pork meat in it. That was delicious. But that warm milk, oh, they didn't know when they tasted anything so good. They couldn't believe it was the same stuff they put in the aquarium not so long ago. Well, while they were eating, the Mills children just sat there and looked at them and smiled. They'd never had company like this before. And so Pete said, after you finish eating, do you suppose you could come to the barn and help us with our surprise? And to their own astonishment, both Sandra and Michael said, sure. That was pretty cooperative of them, wouldn't you say? And so after dinner, Pete got the lantern and they followed him to the barn, him and Michael at the beginning and the girls coming behind. Ivy went up to Sandra and said, the surprise is a Christmas tree. Oh, and then she remembered her manners and says, I'll bet you got a tree at your house, don't you? Sandra thought back to their living room and the 10-foot blue spruce tree with hundreds of lights and glittering ornaments, and them being too bored with Christmas to pay any attention. And Ivy used her best manners and said, "I'll bet it's real pretty." "Yeah," said Sandra. Well, by then they got to the barn, and Pete slid the door open and held the lamp up, and the tree they saw was real little. It was short and put in a wooden bucket with dirt, and it didn't have anything on it. Well, maybe there was a paper chain made out of catalog colored pages, but no tinsel, no lights, no ornaments, and no candy canes. Well, Sandra felt like she ought to say something, and she said, "It's real pretty." And Pete says, "Oh, it ain't nothing to look at. It's a touch, taste, and smell tree for Ma." "And for Ma?" "Ma's blind." "Blind," they said, horrified. "Really? Oh." "Yeah, we wanted to bring her something that she could enjoy. Ma can see a lot of things most people can't, but Christmas trees she can't see. So come on over here. Let's take a good look." And he held the lantern close to the tree, and sure enough, there was some things on it. There was some sweet herbs tied on with a bow, and then there was a string of red peppers that Maybeth had made, and the least ones had given some seeds, little packets of seeds, and there were black walnuts that they found on the mountainside. And there was a nest that Pete had found in the summer, and he took real good care of it. And then at the bottom were 2 arrowheads. Oh, Pete said, "You just wait till you see Ma's face. She'll put those in her hand, and she'll know right away they're arrowheads, and she'll start telling stories about the Cherokee Indians that were in this very parts, and how they used these for instead of bullets for their hunting. Oh, Ma, she's got a heap of stories." And then Sandra and Michael surprised themselves by saying, "I wish I had a present for Ma." And Michael said, "Me too." They never thought about anybody but themselves. And here they were doing it. And they didn't know what to do with all that. Maybeth, Ivy, and Pete assessed them. "Michael, do you read?" "Oh, sure." "Well, then you can read the Christmas story out of the Bible to Ma. She purely loves those words. That'll be the best gift you could give." "Well, okay," he said. And he picked up the little tree in the wooden bucket that would make the little cabin smell real good for a long time. And he led the parade. Pete followed with the lantern, and the girls came behind. But before they went in, Sandra came up to Pete and said, "Pete, would it be okay if I think I could sing a couple of songs for my gift?" "That'd be fine," he said. "Fine as silk." And so in went the little parade. And there was Mrs. Mills and the least ones right down there in front of the fire, waiting for them to all come. They set down the tree, but Michael had the first gift. He's a little nervous, so he was kind of shaken as he turned the pages to try to get to the right place. And when he started to read, his voice was kind of wobbly, until he got his rhythm. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you great tidings of good joy, which will be all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. Mrs. Mills' face shone like a lamp. She was just thrilled, and all the children's eyes were straight on Michael, and they hung on to every single word. Miss Mills said, "Do you get it, young'uns? Do you get how much God loved us? Enough to send Jesus? I can't even imagine that. He loved us that much." She savored the words. She wondered at the story. And she took them with her on her trip of wonderment. Well, after the reading of the story, they took the Christmas tree right straight to Ma, and she got to feel them all. And then they had gingerbread and hot apple cider. Oh, it was a party like that little cabin had not seen in years. And Michael and Sandra looked at each other and realized that it didn't matter what the gift was, whether it was poor or rich. There was so much love. And that's what Father had been trying to tell them, that Christmas was really not about the presents. It's about the love. And that made them miss their father. Wonder where he was now. Was he probably so worried? Wished he hadn't even brought the kids this far away in such isolated territory. They really missed him. Sandra took one each of the least ones and put her arms around them and started singing her gift, songs of Christmas. She sang the songs that she pretended not to know at church. And she sang songs that she had refused to sing at school. But funny thing, she was able to remember all the words as she was teaching the Mills children all the stories. And that was probably the lovely music that came from that cabin that led the search party to them. And they heard their father's hello, and they just scrambled over anybody and everybody that was in their way as they ran Michael and Sandra to the door and opened it and pulled him in and hugged him and kissed him and laughed and cried and said, "Oh, Father, we are so glad to see you." And they pulled him over to where there he was at the fireplace and introduced them. As long as Sandra and Michael lived, they never forgot that Christmas Eve in the North Georgian mountains in that little cabin with the Millses. And as they went down the hill in the back seat, Father had Sandra and Michael on each side, and there was a smile on everyone's face. They were so tall up, the mountain was so high, it felt like they could just reach up and grab stars. But one particularly big, bright one, they were just certain was right there. It was so bright and so close. And Sandra smiled and looked at it and said, "If Miss Mills was here, she'd say that star had stories to tell." And one of the stories might be that God's love took Jesus from heaven to earth. And God's love took Jesus to the cross to give the gift of death so we might have the gift of life. And God's love offered forgiveness of our sins for which we can do nothing, past, present, and future. And God's love invites all who will to spend heaven in his eternal home with him. And God's love patiently waits for all those who will to give their RSVP so they can be assured of their place in heaven. Father hugged those kids one more time tight as he possibly could, and he said, I always knew that the Christmas story was a Christmas story, a love story. God's for us.
Thank you.